Ses deneme. Good evening, dear participants. Sorry for the few minutes. We are running few minutes late because I'm waiting for technical teams confirmation to start. Sorry about that. Asha and Clara, could you please turn on your camera, please? Okay, thank you so much. Clara, I cannot see you. But I think she's in. All right. All right. Dear participants and fellow human rights organizations, welcome to this evening's discussion on Turkey's withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention. My name is Dilek Karal. I will be hosting this important discussion for Hand in Hand for Women with valuable participants from European Women's Lobby, People's Democratic Party from Turkey, Swedish Women's Lobby, Human Rights Association. As we all know, the Istanbul Convention is the most comprehensive legislative document up to date, which provides measures to address all forms of violence against women. Turkey officially withdrew from the Istanbul Convention by a presidential executive order on March 20, 2021. Turkey was the first country who ratified the convention that has been in force in the country since 2014. Our organization initiates a seminar series on Istanbul Convention to start a live debate and exchange of views. Before introducing our guests, I will brief about who is Hand in Hand for Women and what we do. Hand in Hand for Women is established by immigrant women residing in Sweden to better social participation and integration of women into society. Now, Hand has members from different European countries, catching more attention from women working on different aspects of women's rights. We provide social and cultural projects, as well as conducting research and advocacy activities on different aspects of women's rights. Social and cultural projects create continuous psychosocial support for women, even in pandemic times. As a part of advocacy activities, we get together with human rights groups in Europe. We conduct protests, publish manifests and reports. We are also an active part of SEDA working group in Sweden, working together with Swedish Women's Lobby. Last year, we published a significant report to document political persecution and violence against women in Turkey. We conducted in-depth interviews with women who faced imprisonment periods in Turkey. Our report showed that women were subject to multiple forms of violence, such as sexual and gender-based violence in the form of naked search or threat for rape or physical violence. The report also documented the abuses regarding rights of the child, such as imprisonment of pregnant women, women in postpartum period, or breastfeeding women. There were also women who have spent their imprisonment period with their children since they did not have any caretaker. Unfortunately, we know that violence against women goes far beyond political persecution. We claim that violence against women is an extension of gender inequality in Turkey. Since the beginning of this year, we have also witnessed that violence is directed towards all segments of the society in the form of femicide or harming peaceful protests, such as LGBTQ+ movements or Saturday Mothers. Upon this background, today we aim to open a feminist discussion on the impacts of Turkey's withdrawal from the convention with our valuable guests. Now I want to leave the word to our valuable participants from Asha Ellen, European Women's Lobby, and Clara Berglund, Swedish Women's Lobby. Asha, could you please describe a little bit about what European Women's Lobby is doing, and please tell about yourself to us.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to this really important event. I'm really pleased to be here to represent the European Women's Lobby.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us.
And congratulations on the webinar series. So to introduce us, for those of us who may not be familiar, the European Women's Lobby, we are the largest umbrella organization of women's civil society in Europe. We are fortunate to count on over 2,000 member organizations as our members, including the Swedish Women's Lobby. It's great to see you again, Clara. And we have members in all the EU member states, but also EU accession countries. So this includes Turkey, Iceland, and we also have EU-wide organizations who are part of our membership as well, including the European Disability Forum, for example. Yeah. So we're pleased to count on their support and to be able to support them in advocacy for women's rights. The European Women's Lobby actually celebrated our 30th anniversary last year. We've been working for 30 long years to realise women's full human rights and equality in Europe. We work on a number of different issues, but mainly our mission is really to have a holistic, transformational socio-economic vision of an economy based on care and eradicating women's poverty and advancing women's socio-economic independence. We also work diligently on ensuring that women enjoy equal rights and equal participation in a reimagined and transformed decision-making structure and power-holding structures. But of course, we also work on eradicating all forms of violence against women and girls, and ensuring women have been liberated from all forms of oppression, including sexual exploitation, and ensure they have access to full sexual reproductive health and rights as well. So I'm very lucky to be part of the Secretariat of the European Women's Lobby. I coordinate some of our work on violence against women. I specifically focus on the digital aspect in regards to how that impacts on women's lives. So I look at online violence against women and girls, but I also look at how the digitalization and digital transformation of Europe impacts on women's rights in both a positive and a negative way. So that's just a little bit about the European Women's Lobby and a little bit about myself as well.
Okay, thank you very much. These are quite important topics. And also we see that unfortunately, as you tell about the digital violence, in time, the forms of violence just changes and the violence just stays there. It's really sad to see that, but it's really important that you are holding on these topics. And I want to continue with Clara Berglund from Swedish Women's Lobby. Clara, could you please briefly tell about yourself and your organization, please?
Thank you, Dilek, and thank you to Hand in Hand for Women for organizing this event. So, as you mentioned, we are very proud that you are one of our member organizations, and the Swedish Women's Lobby is an umbrella organization for women's organizations in Sweden, and we have about 50 member organizations, and some of them are small local organizations, and some of them are national, and we work on various women's rights and gender equality issues, everything from equal pay and gender budgeting to fighting pornography and prostitution, etc. And I agree with you very much about addressing digitalization in the context of violence, and perhaps that's something interesting that we could be talking about, how to make sure that the Istanbul Convention and also national legislation and other instruments is applicable to online violence and exploitation of women and girls. And we try to use the Istanbul Convention mainly as a tool for accountability on national level, but also at European and global level. And we are very happy to be with you tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And let me introduce other participants who are unable to be with us this evening due to their preoccupations, but luckily they sent us, answered our questions via their video messages. So we'll be following and watching their video messages as well with English subtitles that I want to explain this before. And let me start with Meral Danış Beştaş. Both of them are really important personalities and important names for the women's rights fight from Turkey. Meral Danış Beştaş is a lawyer and she is the group deputy chair of People's Democratic Party. Besides her political career, she was the applicant lawyer of the Opus case. The case was the first trial that Turkey was convicted about the domestic violence internationally. And I will continue with Eren Keskin. Eren Keskin is a lawyer and human rights defender in Turkey. She is the co-chair of the Human Rights Association and co-founder of the Legal Aid Office Against Sexual Harassment and Rape in Custody. In a career spanning over the 3 decades, Keskin has fought for fundamental rights and freedoms in Turkey, particularly for Kurds, women, and LGBTI plus community, and against torture and sexual violence in detention as well. Moreover, the Swedish Annual Lind Prize 2018 is awarded the Turkish human rights lawyer Eren Keskin. So unfortunately, they are not with us tonight, but their messages are quite powerful. And as we discussed before with you, the program line, I will start with the Meral Danış Beştaş video message because she tells very much about the current human rights situation in Turkey. And first of all, let me tell you a little bit about what we asked Meral Danış Beştaş. We asked her if the Istanbul Convention was discussed in Turkey's parliament before Erdogan's decree on withdrawal, because we know that the Istanbul Convention was, but first of all, in 2014 ratified by the parliament, but we see that decision was taken by the presidential order. So we asked her if there was a discussion before this decision, and what was the reactions in the parliament, and what are the views of women in the parliament on Istanbul Convention. So now, also, you know that Istanbul Convention is a binding international legal instrument for the state parties. That's why we also asked her, how does Turkey position itself according to international law with the country's withdrawal? Actually, her video message explains all these issues and topics and very important for us. Let's start with watching her video, and then we will continue with questions.
Öncelikle bütün katılımcılara kucak dolusu sevgi ve selamlarımı iletmek istiyorum. Evet, kadınların mücadelesi dünyanın her yerinde devam ediyor. Türkiye'de de bizim kadınların eşit ve özgür bir yaşam için yürüdüğü yolda daha kat edeceğimiz çok mesafe var maalesef. İstanbul Sözleşmesi konusunda öncelikle bu sözleşmenin Türkiye aleyhine verilen bir karar sebebiyle Avrupa'da konsey tarafından ele alındığını hatırlatmak istiyorum. Nahide Opuz'un Avrupa İnsan Hakları Mahkemesi'ne yaptığı başvuruda Türkiye kadına yönelik ayrımcılık yaptığı sebebiyle ve yaşam hakkını korumaması nedeniyle mahkum edildi ve ihlal kararı verildi. O davanın bizzat avukatı olmam sebebiyle o süreci çok iyi anımsıyorum ve Nahide Opuz 36 defa şiddete uğramasına rağmen, şikayet etmesine rağmen hiçbir önlem alınmamıştı ve annesini eşi öldürdü. Öldürdükten sonra ancak tutuklanabildi ve hatta Türkiye AİHM'e yaptığı savunmada aile içi meselelerin özel yaşam olduğunu ve özel yaşam olduğu için bu müdahalelerin yapılmadığını savunma olarak ileri sürmüştü. Ama Avrupa İnsan Hakları Mahkemesi kadınların nerede olursa olsun, evde de olsa korunması gerektiğini ve bunun devletin birinci derecede yükümlülüğü olduğunu not etmişti. Adı niye İstanbul? Çünkü İstanbul'da imzalandı. İstanbul, Türkiye'nin bir ilinin adını aldı ve Türkiye ilk imzacı olarak bu sözleşmede taraf oldu. Bu sözleşme biz kadınların anayasası niteliğindedir aslında. Özellikle ev içi şiddet, LGBTİ artılara, farklı cinsiyet yönelimlerine karşı tam bir koruma sağlamayı hedefleyen, ayrıntılı düzenlenen ve kadınların verdikleri mücadelede aslında çok büyük bir kazanım olarak orta yerde duruyor. Şimdi Türkiye'de AKP-MHP bloku hayatın her alanında aslında bir totaliterizm, bir tek adam rejimi, baskı uygulamaya devam ediyor ve en büyük düşmanlığı da kadınlara yapıyor diyebiliriz. Uzun süredir İstanbul Sözleşmesi bilinçli bir şekilde tartışmaya açıldı. İmza çekileceği söylendi ve buna karşı Türkiye Kadın Hareketi, Kürt Kadın Hareketi, Türkiye'nin her tarafında kadınlar buna karşı çok büyük bir mücadele yürüttüler. Bu sözleşmeden çekilme olmaması için biz HDP olarak da bunun karşısında her zaman her yerde hem parlamentoda hem sokakta hem alanlarda İstanbul Sözleşmesi'ne sahip çıktığımızı ve bunun kaldırılmasını, imzanın çekilmesini kabul etmeyeceğimizi ifade ettik. Parlamentoda da çok sayıda 102 tane önergemiz var. Kadına yönelik şiddet, ayrımcılıkla ilgili, kadınların yoksulluğuyla ilgili çok farklı başlıklarda bizzat İstanbul Sözleşmesi konulu sayısız önergemiz var. Fakat maalesef parlamentoda bu hak ettiği şekilde tartışılmıyor ve önergelerimiz AKP-MHP oylarıyla her seferinde reddedildi. Parlamentodaki diğer kadın milletvekillerinin yaklaşımının tam olarak anlatmak mümkün değil. Çünkü partimiz ve muhalefet dışındaki partilerde AKP ve MHP'de kadınlar özgürce düşüncelerini ifade edemiyor. Kulağımıza gelen, kamuoyuna yansıyan bazı bilgilere göre diğer partilerdeki milletvekilleri de aslında zaman zaman İstanbul Sözleşmesi'ni sahiplenmişler. Bunu duyuyoruz ama resmi düzeyde çıkıp parlamentoda bunun arkasında duramadılar. Mesela Anayasa Komisyonu'ndaydı, diğer komisyonlarda, KEFEK Komisyonu'nda, Kadın Erkek Fırsat Eşitliği Komisyonu'nda yine İstanbul Sözleşmesi'nin tartışılması önleniyor. Ama biz HDP olarak İstanbul Sözleşmesi'ni hem dün çokça gündemde tuttuk, bugün de tutuyoruz ve bundan vazgeçmeyeceğiz. Yani neticede çok önemli bir sözleşme ve kadınların mücadeleleriyle, yaşamlarıyla ödedikleri bedeller sonucunda imzalanan bir sözleşme olması itibariyle çok büyük bir önemi var ve taraf olan bütün ülkeleri doğrudan bağlayan bir sözleşmeden söz ediyoruz. Türkiye'de bunun taraf olma statüsünün Erdoğan'ın sadece Cumhurbaşkanı imzasıyla yapılması da hukuka da aykırı, ulusal üstü sözleşme mantığına da aykırı. Ayrıca demokratik olmayan bir yöntem. Neticede bu sözleşme parlamentoda kabul edildi ve parlamento ancak imzasını çekebilir. Buna karşın birçok kesim dava açtı. Danıştay'a dava açtılar bunun iptali için. Biz HDP olarak da Danıştay'a davamızı açtık ve bu davadan sonuç çıkmasını bekliyoruz. Bunun hukuki yansımaları ya da sonuçları ne olacak kadınlar açısından? Doğrusu şimdiden yansımalarını görüyoruz. Sokakta, evde, toplumsal yaşamın birçok kesiminde erkekler daha büyük bir özgüvenle konuşmaya başladılar ve kadınlar hız kesmeden katledilmeye, şiddet görmeye, ayrımcılığa maruz bırakılmaya devam ediyor. Yine kadına yönelik şiddet davalarında yargının cezasızlık politikası bundan sonra daha da artacak gibi görünüyor. Neticede sözleşme uygulanmıyordu. Biz uygulansın diye sürekli bunu dillendiriyorduk. Şimdi sözleşmenin kaldırıldığını söyleyen bir iktidar bloku var karşımızda ve bunun aslında ilan ediliş tarzı da kadına yönelik düşmanlığın aynı zamanda resmen ilan edilmesi anlamına geliyor. Neticede biz şu noktadayız. Ne sözleşmedeki haklarımızdan ne mücadelemizden bir tek geri adım atmayacağız. Bu mücadeleye devam edeceğiz. Türkiye'deki bütün kadınlarla işbirliği ve dayanışma halinde birlikte güçlü olduğumuzun bilinciyle yolumuza devam ediyoruz. Uluslararası alanda da bu dayanışmayı çok önemsiyoruz. Diğer kadın kurumlarının, kadın örgütlerinin uluslararası parlamentolarında mücadelemize ses vermesi, dayanışma göstermesi hepimizi daha güçlü kılacaktır diyorum. Tekrar hepinize sevgi ve selamlarımı göndermek istedim.
Yes, yeah, very powerful, right? And every year, as we saw from Meral Yanlış message as well, every year hundreds of women were killed by their partners, ex-partners or close relatives in Turkey. And thousands are unfortunately battered, raped or beaten. Numbers are very high, we know that. And Turkey's withdrawal from the Istanbul Conventions, that's why very tragic and shows clearly that the government does not so much care about any future violence or protection from violence of women. So this is very critical for us to discuss this topic and also keep it alive, keep this protest alive is very important for us. And I now want to continue with Ayşe Alın from European Women's Lobby. Ayşe, how does European Women's Lobby evaluate Turkey's decision? Could you please tell us about the lobby's reaction?
Yes, of course. And I want to reiterate how powerful that testimony was and hearing about what's been happening. And I would first off start out by stating very clearly how strongly EWL condemned the decision taken by President Erdogan, and to reiterate that it was a decision at this stage, and that the process for withdrawing from the Istanbul Convention is actually a process that has to ongo in terms of being part of the Council of Europe. And so they do not actually leave the convention until June. So there is time, there is space, and there is pressure that can be put on to make sure that that is reversed, and that women in Turkey, our sisters in Turkey, are still protected under the Istanbul Convention. But of course, we were very alarmed by what had happened. And for us, working from the European perspective, we were cautious of what our sisters in Turkey, we have a national coordination in Turkey, and our members there were very clear about the potential snowballing effect that we could see. And only in the last week, we've seen discussions in the Polish parliament about leaving the Istanbul Convention. And we already know there were several other EU member states and European countries who were either not implementing the Istanbul Convention or have decided not to ratify the Istanbul Convention. So this is part of that kind of growing backlash that we've seen over the last few years towards women's rights and the threats that this actually poses to women's safety to be free from violence and the risks of violence. Immediately, there was a huge mobilization from our members to support our coordination in Turkey and our sisters across Europe who are affected by this. One of the first things that we did was to look at the opportunities that we had to engage the EU level decision makers and to apply pressure on them to continue to support the Istanbul Convention, but also to condemn the decision of President Erdogan. So we wrote a number of letters actually to the European foreign representative, as well as the Portuguese presidency, who currently holds the presidency of the EU Council. And we did this at an opportune time. There was a foreign ministers meeting, and we wanted to make sure that that letter not only strongly condemned what had happened, but really called to action for the EU to be a voice to push for support of the Istanbul Convention. So we got that out as soon as possible, but we also wrote similar letters to the Council of Europe and also to the EU institutions, really pushing to ensure that they were a voice and used every opportunity that they could to show support for the Istanbul Convention.
That's great, Aisha. And also I will be asking you about the details of your letter, because it was also a powerful letter and you are calling for actions, and we will talk the details later. We'll get back to you. And also I want to direct another similar question to Clara Berglund from Swedish Women's Lobby. Clara, you know that Turkey has been given the signals of withdrawal from Istanbul Convention months before. As Swedish Women's Lobby, you have partaken in protests. Also, you published a manifesto to protest Turkey's government for the initiation, together with Hand in Hand for Women. However, against all these protests, the government took this unfortunate decision. We tried our best, all women's lobbies and groups. How does European Swedish Women's Lobby evaluate Turkey's decision? What was the reaction in the lobby?
Well, I think I agree with much of what Asha said, and it's of course very worrying, and also the symbolism that Turkey decided to go public with its decision, or Erdogan's decision to withdraw from the convention during the UN Commission on the Status of Women. So it was given much attention during the commission and in the negotiations as well. So that's really deliberate way to try to send a signal to other countries and try to just get that snowball rolling that Asha was describing. So we need to take that very seriously. It's of course a very serious situation for women in Turkey, but also for women all around the world, just to see that backlash, how it's growing and growing. And we appreciate very much the cooperation that we had with Hand in Hand on, I think it was on the International Day for the Abolition of Violence Against Women, November 25th. Yeah. We sent a letter to the ambassador, the Turkish ambassador in Sweden. But I think that we could, and we should do more actually. Perhaps we should have some, manifestations or activities going, perhaps all the way up until June. I know one idea that we had, and we also tried to get the European Women's Lobby aboard, was to go to the Turkish embassy with orange balloons, perhaps 200 balloons to symbolize 200 women are killed every year in Turkey. So perhaps if we could do something like that in all EWL member countries, the women's movement, we could do some coordinated effort to keep pressure on, and all ideas are welcome. But I think that was great that we took that initiative together, but also that we should try to do more and to not give up and to keep the pressure on. Thank you.
Yeah, that's true. And also the developments showed us that our efforts was important, but also we should keep going. It's like the signal that yani, you should keep going, you shouldn't take it granted. And now I want to take you back to Turkey again and continue with Eren Keskin's video message, where she answered our questions. We asked her what are the impacts of Turkey's withdrawal from Istanbul Convention on women's rights in Turkey, since she has been defending women's rights for long. And also we asked Eren Keskin, she has been defending human rights in Turkey, which is a country of social polarization. We asked her how does she elaborate her fight for human rights, and if she faced additional struggles for being a woman in the field, because her position is like she's not taking sides in her struggle. She's defending all. She's doing the best for the human rights. So it was very unique stand, and it was very important in a country where social polarization very high. You can be labeled by doing with somebody, being alone with somebody, and it gets into like a level of crime. So her position was very important for us. So we directed her these questions, and now let's continue with her video message.
Yaşadığımız coğrafya erkek egemen, feodal ve militer anlayışın hüküm sürdüğü bir coğrafya. Ve kadına yönelik şiddet çok yoğun yaşanıyor. Çok fazla kadın cinayeti işleniyor. Kadınlar evde, sokakta, gözaltında, köy baskınlarında cinsel işkenceye, şiddete maruz kalıyorlar. Böylesine bir coğrafyada 2011 yılında imzalanan İstanbul Sözleşmesi bizler için çok önemliydi. Devlet tarafından uygulamada yoğun sorunlar yaşansa da duygusal bir destekti bizim için bu sözleşmenin varlığı. Ancak maalesef ki geçtiğimiz günlerde Türkiye Cumhuriyeti Cumhurbaşkanı tek imzayla bu sözleşmeyi feshettiğini açıkladı. Buna rağmen kadınlar hala bu sözleşmeye karşı direniyorlar. Çünkü İstanbul Sözleşmesi bugüne kadar kadına yönelik şiddet alanında yazılmış en iyi sözleşme. Bu sözleşmenin arkasında büyük bir kadın hakları mücadelesi var. Biz sonuna kadar sözleşmenin yeniden geri gelmesi için sonuna kadar Kadın Kurtuluş Hareketi olarak mücadelemize devam edeceğiz. Ben 30 yıldır insan hakları mücadelesi içindeyim. Çok zorlu bir coğrafyada yaşıyoruz biz. Sadece Türk ve Sünni Müslüman kimliğini temel alan bir resmi ideoloji ve bu resmi ideoloji üzerinden yaratılmış yalan bir tarih anlayışı hüküm sürmekte bizim coğrafyamızda. 1915 Ermeni ve diğer Hristiyan halklara yapılan soykırım, 1938 Dersim soykırımı, 12 Eylül darbesi, yani sayamayacağımız kadar çok ihlallerin yaşandığı bir coğrafyada insan hakları savunucusu olmak çok kolay değil. Hele ki bir kadın insan hakları savunucusu olmak daha da zor. Ben de bu mücadele içinde cezaevine girdim, 2 kere silahlı saldırı yaşadım ve şu anda da devlet tarafından büyük baskı altında olan Özgür Gündem gazetesine 3 yıl gönüllü genel yayın yönetmeni aktif olarak yapmadığım halde böyle gözüktüğüm için şu anda hakkımda toplam 26 yıl 2 ay hapis cezası var. 1 yıl meslekten yasaklandım 2004 yılında. Ama buna rağmen yaşadığımız coğrafyada bu kadar baskılara rağmen biat etmeyen, boyun eğmeyen bir damar da var. İnsan hakları savunucuları da işte bu damarın içinde büyük bir yer kaplıyorlar. Bu nedenle de mücadeleme devam ediyorum.
Yes, and as we saw from Eren Keskin's message, actually, women have right to claim their own bodies, choices, and lives. We know that, but that's why I think the autocratic regimes are afraid of conventions like Istanbul Convention that protects and supports women from discrimination and violence. They continue to attack women's freedom and independence, not only in Turkey, but also, as we discussed, about the snowball effect in different European countries too, or different parts of the world. So it is very critical that we keep discussing these issues. So I want to get back to you, Asha, about to further understand Turkey's withdrawals impacts in Europe. And we have time now. We finished watching our video messages, and we can discuss as you like. You said that you mentioned about that Turkey's move emboldened the ruling party of Poland, and also they announced their intention to leave the convention. What do you think in general, the European level impact of Turkey's withdrawal? How would it affect the other countries, or what are the European Women's Lobby's prospects for implementation of the convention Europe-wide? Because we know that it is shaky and the implementation is the important part. Could you please tell us a little bit about the perspective?
Of course, yes. And to build on exactly what was being talked about in the last video that we saw, this environment for women's human rights defenders and for feminist activists, it's been increasingly hostile for them. And the Istanbul Convention has almost been at the crux of this backlash movement that we're seeing in terms of opposition to it and how it's being seen, when it is very clear, as explained by the Council of Europe, it is the most comprehensive framework we have for combating violence against women. That's its aim, that's its purpose, and that's why we need it. And so for the European Women's Lobby, as I mentioned before, we understood very quickly, especially from the information we were getting from our members and from the experts that we have within our network, we are very fortunate to count on an observatory on violence against women. This is a group of 45 experts, human rights defenders, lawyers, service providers who really let us know what's happening on the ground. And for the last 3 or 4 years, they've been telling us about what's been happening. And in regards to what we were mentioning in terms of that snowball effect, you may recall that 3 years ago, the Bulgarian Constitutional Court decided that the Istanbul Convention was unconstitutional. So they didn't move ahead with their ratification. Our sisters in Croatia had to work incredibly hard to get the convention ratified there. Luckily it was, but that was quite a large fight. And as Clara was saying, the work is not done. Ratification is one step in the process. Having it implemented and being effectively implemented and ensuring that women's civil society are fully supported, that women and survivors are able to be protected from violence or re-victimization, and the prevention of violence by combating stereotypes and that persist in cultures and societies is so important. So for us, it's very clear that this is all part of that larger picture from that backlash to women's rights. And I think we can't not mention what's been happening during the pandemic. You've mentioned it a bit before, but the increased amount of violence and domestic violence women have been experiencing during this pandemic and being locked at home with their perpetrators and limited access to services. So for us, we look at in a very holistic way and try to build our advocacy and build our campaigns and build our mobilization and support our members with that framework in mind, and reiterating how urgent it is in actually addressing combating violence against women and girls.
I want to add one more thing, like how states parties' reactions to your work? What kind of reactions do you get? I wondered when you were talking about, because you are pushing them from different aspects, not just on one certain aspect, not just law, not just you also trying to take into the social life, economic life, different aspects of women's rights. So how's the state party's reactions to this? Like what kind of reactions, comments you are getting throughout your way?
Yeah, we mobilized, as I mentioned before, extremely quickly, and we had reactions almost immediately, at least from the institutional perspective when we were contacting the Council of Europe. But in terms of state parties, there were some who were very clear that they supported the Istanbul Convention. And a lot of our work, of course, at the European Women's Lobby, we made our advocacy, where we are based in the Secretariat, is based towards the European level, but we are a membership organization. It's what our members do at national level that really kind of push forward ensuring equality. And because the EU is made up of 27 member states, without their agreement, without their push, things will not be agreed to. So of course we're seeing a lot more impact actually. So you may have seen that this week Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen and Council President Charles Michel went to Ankara, and they did mention the Istanbul Convention in their discussions with President Erdogan. And that was very much thanks to the mobilization of organizations like yours and all of the organizations who really put the pressure on at national level. I mean, our members, nearly all of them, wrote a letter to their national representative in Brussels, to the foreign ministries. They really put the pressure on where they needed to. And of course, there are some champions for gender equality and preventing violence against women. But that's really where we see the impact in kind of that mobilization and having a women's movement, very clear that it is a collective movement across Europe to have support for the Istanbul Convention. So we did see quite a few reactions, and we were able to have some very productive meetings and to get some commitments. And this kind of ties into the second part of your question that you were talking about in terms of the prospects that we see for the Istanbul Convention. So, of course, our main priority is to see that the Istanbul Convention is ratified and fully implemented by all EU member states, but also the EU as well. The EU signed the Istanbul Convention in 2017, and unfortunately, that process has been blocked because of exactly what we're talking about, this opposition and this backlash. And so we want to make sure that the commitments that they outlined in their gender equality strategy last year, where they commit to the ratification of the Istanbul Convention, is realized, but also to continue this prioritization of advancing women's rights. And so because the EU itself had to sign the convention in a very limited scope as a regional organization, what we would also like to see is a clear proposal for legal instruments, such as a directive at EU level, which will fill those gaps, but also align very clearly with the standards of the Istanbul Convention and be a very clear commitment from the EU to show that women will benefit from equal standards in all the member states, but also, of course, in those standards in other countries as well, to make sure they're protected from violence and violence is prevented. So this is really what our driving advocacy goal is at the moment, and really kind of pushing the EU and the European Commission to solidify this commitment and coming forward with a proposal as soon as possible.
Yeah. And also I want to underline one more time that European Women's Lobby has published a letter condemning Turkey's decision on Istanbul Convention. And you were calling states for action, state parties for action. And you were saying that we are going to follow up these steps. Are you taking the steps clearly? So what are your strategies to follow up these states, and how are you going to do this? And what was the call for action that you are doing?
Yeah, precisely. So the letters were quite clear in that we wanted the EU, the people we were writing to, so the High Representative, the Commission entities that work in towards the neighbourhood countries, it's referred to as DG NEAR, our colleagues in the Council of Europe, to publicly condemn the decision by President Erdogan, to be very clear that his decision and that declaration does not mean Turkey has left the Istanbul Convention. There is a process and it can be reversed, and that the recommitment to women's rights could be very clearly there. But we also use the opportunity to ask the EU institutions to reaffirm their commitment to making sure that women's rights was high on the political agenda, that achieving equality between women and men, which is in the EU treaties, it's there, they have a commitment to do it, is one of their core values, and is ensuring that in their interaction and what they're projecting is also essential there too. So we keep the pressure on by constantly raising awareness, supporting our membership organizations in the actions that they're doing, but we do not take our foot off the pedal, as it were. We are consistently engaging. The letters was the first step. And then we come back together and we remobilize. We were able to organize several very important meetings with different stakeholders and bring them together to have a cross kind of functional discussion. And again, that's just another step. It really is about keeping the pressure up and keeping the momentum moving forward and identifying the political opportunities for us to make sure that those discussions are there. So, of course, looking at what happened this week in Turkey with the visit from the EU representatives, we've come out with another statement on what also happened there in regards to, just to be quite honest, the disrespect that was showed to Commissioner von der Leyen as the first female president of the European Commission, and how that ties into the fact that Turkey had, that President Erdogan has said he wants to keep the Istanbul Convention.
Very clear expression of that, even at that level of just duty or something doesn't get enough.
Exactly.
At that level, what are you going to do with it,
Precisely, but what it speaks to is the prevalence of sexism and how that was so prevalent in that moment, and it speaks to the deprioritization, it seems, of women's rights and protection from violence in that moment. So we again are constantly keeping the pressure wherever we can, and supporting our members with the implementation of the Istanbul Convention at national level, and also in regards to the monitoring processes, right? So you may be familiar with the Grevio monitoring platform. So this is the platform that monitors the evaluation. We always mobilize our members to do the shadow reports on this. So it's a constant for us in terms of those follow-up processes. And we do very public calls and very public manifestations. But of course, there's a lot of advocacy towards political decision makers and stakeholders to make sure they are also champions of exactly what we are asking for, and eradicating violence against women. So there's a lot of different steps, and there's a lot of different people mobilized, but it is our priority. We have to realize a world where women can live free from all forms of violence.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, I keep up the great work. I want to, before finalizing the program, I want to ask a couple of questions to Clara from Sweden's Women Lobby. Clara, I want to direct you as well, because I want to learn about your ideas. Do you believe that Istanbul Convention is practiced sufficiently Europe-wide? Do you believe that it is practiced sufficiently? Of course, we are criticizing all the time, but which aspects are more problematic to you?
Just want to start with also to send my support to the speakers that you had via video link. So just if you can forward to them our support in their struggle, and how important their work is and in that difficult situation. And when it comes to how, if the Istanbul Convention is practiced enough, so I think that clearly it's not, and not even in Sweden. So we all agree that it's the most far-reaching, legally binding instrument that we have when it comes to preventing and combating violence against women and girls. But we don't, even the countries that has signed and ratified the convention, we don't use it enough. So for example, Sweden signed the convention in 2011 and ratified it in 2014. And we have just completed, almost 2 years ago, we completed the first monitoring cycle, which means that the group of experts, Grevio, that Asha mentioned, they have done the first review of Sweden, how well Sweden lives up to the convention. And the civil society has been invited also to give our view and to participate in that process. But it's clear from the recommendations that Grevio has given to Sweden that even though compared to many other countries, we have come a long way when it comes to gender equality and also combating violence. But Sweden gets criticisms on all those different themes of the convention, which is when it comes to prevention, protections of the victims of violence, prosecution. We have almost impunity when it comes to getting perpetrators prosecuted for crimes of violence against women and girls, and also when it comes to policy issues. So, and also I would like to say that in the women's movement and in the civil society, we could also, we are just now, I think, starting to learn how to really use the Istanbul Convention as a tool for accountability in our everyday work, and not just during that cycle, but all the way until the next cycle, to use those recommendations from the committee to try to hold our government accountable to that and to follow up on that continuously. So we are really trying to do that as best we can and learning as we go how to do it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And also maybe this question is to you, Clara, but also Asha, if you want to talk or comment on it, it's quite all right. How do you see, Clara, Turkey from Europe in terms of human rights? Because I believe that it's not a very clear picture, it's very foggy. And what are the most problematic areas in your perspective? Because you are also following different human rights movements, different parts of the world. And how do you see it?
I think actually, Dilek, that you are probably better suited to answer that than I am, because you are the experts and you have voices on the ground in Turkey from women's rights activists. But we are very worried that Turkey is trying to withdraw from the convention, and about the backlash that we see against women's rights in Turkey and many other countries. We see it when it comes to especially issues concerning women's bodies. So, for example, abortion, that was mentioned previously, comprehensive sexuality educations, all those sexual and reproductive health rights and issues are very controversial, or actually growing more controversial because of that backlash. And I think that in defending and promoting the Istanbul Convention, it's really important that we actually, we go back to the agreed language of the convention to see, what does it really say, and what were those commitments that was made from the beginning, because there's a lots of misunderstandings as well, like that the backlash, the organized backlash against women's human rights, they are, trying to use those misunderstandings of what is the content on the application, so of the convention. So for example, I want to maybe if I can quote like the preamble of the Istanbul Convention. It says that recognizing the structural nature of violence against women as a gender-based violence, and that violence against women is one of the crucial mechanisms by which women are forced into a subordinate position compared with men, and especially that gender and ultimately sex-based understanding of violence that is so important. It's underlined throughout the convention, for example, in Article 18 and also in Article 49. And I think to go back to that and to remember that this is what the Istanbul Convention is really about. It's about men's violence against women, and to see who is the perpetrator and who is the victim, because we need to do that in order to make sure that we can have concrete actions on all of those different, to protect the victims, the predominantly women that are victims, to have prevention efforts and all of those different very, very concrete actions that are required by the conventions. They need us to remember that. And sometimes I feel in this discussion, we are sliding away from what was the convention really about. So I think we also need to go back to the core of the convention.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Clara, for underlining these facts and the preamble of the convention. It's really important. And also, this is very clear, actually, because we all the time get these comments. For example, when we are talking about the LGBTQ plus movements, or just like women in prison, or just women harassed by the security force or something, they say that, no, it is against the group, not directed against women directly. It's not about women. So it is like they think that it is directed against their ideology, but the women are the victims, So we have to always underline and take this into account, that it is the women is under this patriarchal regimes or autocratic regimes that victimize. So it is really important that you underline that. Thank you so much. Asha, would you like to have any finishing comments for us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Clara explained it perfectly in regards to making sure we remember the purpose of the Istanbul Convention and understand that the kind of narrative around it and what's been discussed over the last 3 or 4 years is a deliberate act to try and move away from the purpose of the Istanbul Convention. And we really have to look at what is happening around it. I mean, one example in Turkey specifically is looking at the implementation of, I believe it's Law 6284, which was the national legislation for the implementation of the Istanbul Convention, and how they were slowly rolling back on that specific law before then making the decision to leave the convention, as it were. So it's something to remember. One thing I always say that women are not a minority group. Of course, we are 52% of the global population, and we are a diverse group of population. And so, in terms of looking at things, in terms of how it's been discussed from a kind of it's a small issue, going back to the discussions that were mentioned in the videos on how it's familial, so it's not really up to the state to intervene, and it's part of the family. This narrative needs to be eradicated, and we also need to be able to move beyond the discussions about, you know, where the backlash is coming from, and really get now into the concrete actions of combating it, because we're now beginning really to see the effect that it's had over the last 3 years, and it's beginning to really roll back on women's rights. So the fight does have to continue, and this is only done when we work together with us, between the mobilization of different women's organizations, of frontline organizations like yours, national organizations, umbrella organizations, because together, clearly they're quite scared of us when we work together. So I think it's great for us to keep pushing, and to remember that violence against women and girls, of course, is a pervasive violation of women's human rights, and we cannot rest until this is not a reality anymore.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And also now I want to close up the program, and thank you very much for our respected participants and our listeners. We show our support to all feminist movements in Turkey and all around Europe and all around the world, defending women's rights. But more than this, we are asking for full accession, ratification, and implementation of Istanbul Convention all over Europe. So let's take Istanbul Convention as a milestone to remind us our fight for women's rights. That should be continuous and not taken for granted. We call all women's rights organizations to continue protesting Turkey's withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention. And we do not accept the withdrawal, and we do not go back from our long debated rights. Thank you very much, and have a great evening. Thank you so much.